I can find it here. Let me just see if I can find it here. Wandile, I'm just hoping to find it here. On my desktop.
Doc, alternatively, I can share the screen and then you can take control.
Okay, yes, let's do that. I'm getting a bit older in terms of age, so technology is it's becoming more of a hassle for me, but yes, I'll do that for you.
Okay, so on my side, it says that I'm sharing the screen.
Okay, I'm sending the request.
Okay, I've allowed. All right, so I can begin.
Wonderful, thank you.
All right, good afternoon, colleagues and attendants to the webinar. So today I'll be presenting a synopsis of my master's research titled Investigating the Potential Role of Nuclear Energy in Promoting Regional Economic Development in SADC. Coal-fired energy is regarded as a carbon-intensive resource in a world that increasingly seeks environmentally friendly and green energy initiatives. It can be argued that there is no such thing as a benign energy project when environmental and sustainability matters are considered. A state's ability to generate surplus energy capacity can serve any state as a commodity that assists the state and its neighboring states in the developmental region. The lack of access to energy affects socioeconomic development and hinders sustainable development for any region in the world. Numerous efforts in Africa have failed to increase its electricity generation as the energy crisis continues to cripple the continent. The South African Development Community is a developmental region comprised of 16 states in the southern African continent. The region is plagued with an energy crisis despite efforts made by the South African Power Pool in 1995 and the SADC Energy Protocol in 1996 to develop a sustainable regional energy infrastructure for the region's benefit. In recent decades, there has been a disruption in the sustainable supply of energy in the SADC region, which has been characterized by frequent power outages, load curtailment, and load shedding, as most of South Africans are aware of. Structural transformation in the region is one of the key focus areas of SADC's strategy that seeks to industrialize, modernize, improve, and bring about closer regional integration. South Africa is the region's dominant electricity generator, mostly produced via coal-fired power station as a baseload source, along with its dominant economic status. Eskom, South Africa's parastatal, provides electricity to 7 SADC states as it struggles to meet its own electricity demand. So the 2019 Regional Infrastructure Development Master Plan Assessment Report highlights that only 32% of the region's rural areas only have access to electricity. Notably, in comparison to the rest of the continent, regarding access to electricity, SADC is behind. Equivalent to the weighted average for the entire sub-Saharan Africa, approximately 50% of the residents in the region have access to electricity, whereas 100% access to electricity has been achieved or reached in North of Africa. The energy crisis in SADC requires immediate attention, and failure to do so will continue to constrain the growth of economies in the region. Eskom has been well in tune with building coal-fired power stations over the last decade to produce relatively low-cost energy for its customers. However, the demand still exceeds the supply. Subsequently, Eskom's electricity capacity and its number of commissioned coal-fired plants have made the parastatal to be ranked the 13th highest emitter of carbon emissions globally. A 2018 report by Greenpeace found that the province of Mpumalanga has the worst nitrogen dioxide pollution hotspot in the world. This is largely the result of the South African coal belt running through the province. Next slide, please. It is without a doubt that as development continues and global warming fast becomes a problem, however, how energy is generated needs to become much cleaner, more effective, low carbon, and sustainable. Therefore, it is a no-regret decision to explore the role that the introduction of nuclear energy technology has in the state's energy mix and how regional socio-economic development in the region may be bolstered, subsequently alleviating the energy crisis in the region. Despite the negative rhetoric of nuclear energy, the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, has argued that nuclear technology can be utilized for peaceful purposes, including energy generation. Nuclear energy is one of the most low carbon emitting energy generators in the world. Nuclear energy is one of the key solutions to mitigating climate change and ensuring energy security. Gwede Mantashe, which is the South African Minister for Mineral Resources and Energy, in his 2019 budget speech vote, reiterated that there is a need for the state to begin implementation plans for building additional nuclear capacity beyond 2024. So something happened with the presentation. I'm not sure if everyone is still following.
Wandile, yes, I was able to share the slides, sorry, so that everyone can see. So hopefully everyone can see the slides now.
All right, so the next heading I'm at is what nuclear entails. So this should be the slide number 3, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it's slide number 4, but what nuclear entails for South Africa and the region.
All right. So let me just quickly finish up the previous point. So Gwede Mantashe, which is South Africa's Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, in his 2019 budget vote speech, reiterated that there is a need for the state to begin implementation plans for additional nuclear capacity beyond the 2024 as the state transitions towards a diversified energy and cleaner energy mix in line with Chapter 5 of the National Development Plan. So given this, Given Eskom's dominance in energy generation in the region, SADC ought to consider the importance of South Africa's hegemonic positions regarding pooling its resources through research-led development strategies. The main objectives of SADC are to achieve an economic development, enhance the standard of living and quality of life, peace and security. And by supporting the socially disadvantaged through regional integration, this commitment has manifested in several regional integration projects whereby South Africa plays a leading role. South Africa plays a key role as a member of the South African Power Pool, as a member of the SAPP, by actively seeking to provide a sustainable and economic supply of electricity to the SAPP. It is without a doubt that South Africa has maintained a leadership role in the regional integration and development of SADC. The state's dominance by economic activity in the region has accounted for 60% of SADC's total trade and approximately 70% of the region's GDP. The nuclear industry has a role to play in job creation and economic growth, providing short and long-term employment and economic development. To put this into perspective, a 2017 Economic Impact Assessment report of Koeberg Nuclear Power Plants prepared by KPMG Services found that the Koeberg Power Station combined impact through investment and operation between 2013 and 2016, Koeberg contributed approximately 30.2 billion to the GDP of the Western Cape province. So now that's approximately 1.4% of the provincial GDP and 23.1 billion to the South African economy. In the very same period, an average of 1,786 direct jobs were sustained and creating approximately 35,000 indirect and induced jobs per year, making the total estimated revenue of 16.4 billion for the national government. Next slide, please. Additionally, Koeberg and its supply chain stakeholders contributed 8 billion to the Western Cape provincial revenue between the 2012 and 2013 and 2015 and 2016 fiscal periods through direct and indirect tax collections. Moreover, in the same period, 9 billion was contributed by Koeberg to the national fiscus. Interestingly enough, Koeberg has contributed 15 billion to household income in the very same fiscal period. So yes, I know, so there's so many billions, right? But what is the relation of this to jobs? Between 2016 and 2020, Koeberg expects to create and sustain an average of 2,300 direct jobs and 42,000 indirect jobs per annum in the Western Cape province. So this is not just manual labor. So Koeberg employees' income levels are above the industry average in South Africa because of the highly skilled nature of the job and opportunities available. For the rest of South Africa, in the same period, Koeberg contributed approximately 63,000 jobs. Therefore, access to sustainable electricity is a key input for many products and processes in the state economy, making Koeberg a direct contributor to the economic growth both in the Western Cape and in South Africa. Next slide, please. So, regionalism can be described as a set of values, identities, and common objectives that lead towards the formation of regions and regional cooperation given within a geographical area. It fosters the creation and development of governmental frameworks and regional institutions, an effort to shape and regulate collective action. Regional integration has always had its focus on access to markets, and on several fronts, regional cooperation has been important in attracting goods, in good attention. The increase in the physical linkages across the African continent has spread environmental externalities beyond the national jurisdiction. Next slide, please. So Africa's integration efforts have failed to bear pleasing results in comparison to other regions beyond the continent that improve the economic welfare through integration mechanisms. Africa's continued challenge facing regional economic integration has been sorry about that. So it has been a continued reliance on the old model of regionalism, which is an ideological paradigm of Pan-Africanism with its focus on politics rather than the economy. Moreover, the elites in Africa tend to focus on the wrong set of priorities that does not ensure that the state policies are inclusive of regional development. This is often coupled with too little commitment towards a developed Africa. So the development of Vision 2027, which is SADC's regional integration, which is SADC's regional infrastructure development master plan. This is a guide to the development and implementation of priority infrastructure projects in the region. So 6 priority sectors are identified by the Regional Infrastructure Development Master Plan that need emphasis on development, namely energy, transport, tourism, information and communication, meteorology, and transboundary water. Although SADC has defined various development programs for integration, the lack of political will in implementing the various treaties and protocols has limited the organization's success. Next slide, please. So to keep pace with the rising electricity demand, coupled with the need to continue supporting and promoting sustainable development and regional integration, certain elements need to be put in place, namely various legal, regulatory, and institutional framework that would assist in facilitating the growth of the energy sector, which includes the electricity subsector. SADC acknowledges the importance of nuclear energy as a key subsector in keeping up the demand for electricity, a subsector currently dominated by South Africa and in the process of expanding in the coming years, subject to the utilizations of the vast available uranium deposits across the region. Cross-border energy cooperation in Africa is not a new phenomenon. Bilateral power trading agreements have been signed as far back as the 1950s. The business of power pooling is clear and powerful. Energy producers are enabled to access larger markets, thereby avoiding excessive grid losses by selling to the customers close to where the energy is produced. This assists states with energy deficits or limited energy to access reliable energy from the neighboring states. The practice of power pooling is not straightforward. Gradual development is required in power pooling as a collection of interconnections, bilateral agreements, and deals between members. A regional regulator should be given authority to facilitate this process and apply its rules. A power pool is only as strong as its weakest link. Next slide, please. The development of nuclear energy has become one of the key focal points when considering a sustainable energy mix. The advantages of nuclear energy ranges from the production of electricity via nuclear fission as opposed to chemical burning. Nuclear energy provides baseload electricity to the electric grid with no output of carbon emissions. Nuclear energy is considered to have the highest capacity factor, which is a measure of what percentage of the time a power plant produces energy when compared with other energy sources. Nuclear energy produces carbon-free electricity that is reliable, that is reliable more than 92% of the time. This is twice as reliable as coal, which is at 43.3%, natural gas at 54%, and almost 3 times as more than wind energy at 34% and solar energy at 24%. Environmentalists concerned with global warming often view nuclear energy as the devil's excrement due to the associated danger. However, the commercial use of nuclear energy, its management and disposal of radioactive waste has more than 50 years of experience and have not caused a series of health or environmental problems, nor has it posed any real risk to the general population. The adequate availability of uranium resources highly influences the growth potential of nuclear energy. The abundance of uranium drives the push towards nuclear energy. Africa accounts for 18% of the world's known recoverable uranium resources. However, through research and further exploration, more uranium may be discovered in Africa and in the SADC region. Transitioning from coal to nuclear energy can be considered as a radical decarbonization, since the nuclear power plant only releases carbon emissions from its ancillary use of fossil fuel during the mining, construction, processing of fuel, maintenance, and decommissioning of the nuclear power plant. Next slide, please. So the Pebble Bed Modular Reactor Program was the African National Congress' first nuclear program. Initially, the PBMR was aimed at delivering energy both locally and for export to industry and household. It was expected that the PBMR program would export 20 reactors per year, and 10 reactors will be built for domestic use. Advantage of PBMR is its size, as it allows the construction period to be staggered, therefore allowing the initial reactor to be running and generate revenue. This assists in the funding of construction for other reactors. So originally, it was envisioned that the PMBR would produce electricity based on a 400 megawatt design in a small modular reactor, rather than a pricey pressurized water reactor plants like the Koeberg Nuclear Power Station. The PBMR becomes part of a wider nuclear policy in 2008, which aimed to revive the manufacturing process, including the enrichment of uranium and nuclear fuel process. But by 2015, it was aimed that the new PBMR would be built, and in the process, more than 10,000 jobs would be created in the industry. However, between 2005 and 2009, it became clear that potential investors and customers of the PBMR were severely restricted and therefore unable to acquire either. So on the global nuclear front, a large percentage of the 440 operational nuclear power plants as of November 2022 are in industrialized states. Only a small fraction of Africa's energy mix is constituted by South Africa's 2 nuclear power stations. South Africa accounts for approximately 60% of all energy produced in Africa. Next slide, please. South Africa is considered a hub for regional integration for Southern Africa. Approximately 70% of regional GDP is generated by the state. Furthermore, the state plays a key role in the African Union's new Partnership for Africa's Development, which is NEPAD, and regionally in SADC. Much of the intra-SADC investment flows through South Africa. Therefore, South Africa's investment maintains a key role in neighboring states by accounting for approximately 9 to 20% of the GDP in Namibia, Mauritius, the Kingdom of Eswatini, Lesotho, and Mozambique. As a member of the nuclear supplies regime, the Africa Group, and the non-aligned movement, South Africa can promote the importance of nuclear non-proliferation, considering that export controls should not be the So South Africa can promote the importance of nuclear non-proliferation, considering that export controls should not become the means whereby developing states are denied access to advanced technologies for the development. As such, embracing relatively new technologies such as digital twinning, which is a virtual replication of a facility such as a nuclear energy facility, or a process by combining design information, process data, and simulation capacities that allow the optimization of operations throughout the entire cycle. Next slide, please. So South Africa's embracing of digital twinning could provide a perfect catalyst to replicate the nuclear facilities and not limit the SMRs such as the PBMR to be built in states such as Namibia and the DRC, Malawi, which already have existing operational uranium mines and or are producers of uranium in recent years. Notably, exploration and mine development are still required in some prospective or SADC states that can be suppliers of uranium, namely Botswana, Tanzania, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. This would be in line with some of the IEA nuclear-related agreements, such as the African Regional Cooperative Agreement for Research, Development, and Training related to nuclear science and technology, AFRA for short, amongst other agreements. So the SADC region, through the SAPP, stands to benefit greatly from South Africa's new nuclear build plans. The SAPP's mandate has always been clear in its attempt to link the southern and northern energy sources and electricity grids as a means to surpass member states' differences and allow support between states during peak periods and emergencies. The SAPP has observed an increase in potential benefit that could be brought to the SADC region via nuclear energy. I'm almost done. So next slide, please. Nuclear energy projects have immense potential to profoundly contribute to the local economy of the region where the project is built. For instance, the Ulchin nuclear power station located in the Ulchin region in South Korea is one of the well-documented nuclear power plants regarding its regional economic contribution. The region has experienced a large economic growth spurt due to the construction of the Ulchin nuclear power plants. The project led to the creation of jobs in the construction and operation phases. The development of local infrastructure to support the project, such as the building of schools, training and scholarship programs, and expansion of medical facilities, amongst other, contributed immensely to the economic growth of the region. Therefore, it can be concluded that nuclear energy is an essential commodity in the fostering of regional economic development and alleviating the current energy crisis. Interestingly, nuclear energy is not a one-trick pony, as it maintains a number of positive economic spin-offs that can contribute to the state's economic development, therefore improving the standard of living. It remains imperative that SADC member states should strive towards the harmonization of regional energy policies that hold salient to the building of necessary infrastructure to fulfill the mandates of the SAPP by supplying energy throughout the region. Several SADC member states are considering adding nuclear power plants to the state's energy generation mix to assist with meeting the rising electricity demand. A partial synchronization of existing and emerging regulatory frameworks is required, including better networking of the SADC nuclear regulators and development of human resources and the introduction of information technologies. It is with good reason that nuclear energy is highly regulated. This is to ensure the safe and secure handling of nuclear materials, reactors, and waste disposal of all existing and new nuclear energy projects in the SADC region. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Wandile. An excellent presentation, and I enjoyed it. And you'll see there